while we're on the subject of Lauren Boebert, one clip I didn't get to. I talked about a part of this exchange, kind of the end of it, but I didn't get to kind of a really good moment from a recent hearing. And I think, let me pull this up. I think it was titled something like "Death by 1,000 Cuts." Biden's "Death by 1,000 Regulations." There we go. "Death by 1,000 Cuts." I'm thinking of Taylor Swift's song. The Biden administration's campaign to bury America in red tape. That was the name of the hearing. Lauren Boebert was at this hearing and just started attacking one of the individuals who was in front of Congress, in front of this hearing.
Before you play that clip, I've got to point out, you said red tape and you emphasized red, and you also mentioned Taylor Swift, and that's a great song by Taylor Swift. Mind. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. And so, and what's awesome to see, this is I'm a little late to discussing this clip, but it's too good not to talk about, is Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat, jumps in afterwards after Raskin also dunks on Boebert and just really effectively points out how absurd Lauren Boebert is, how disrespectful, and someone who shouldn't be a congresswoman. Take a look at this.
I would go back to your statement that you said in your testimony that these agencies are not free agencies and they can only do which Congress has delegated to them to do.
Congress is not
Ms. Katzen,
specific. Excuse me.
Thank you. My time. No, ma'am, it's my time. They tying us up in red tape. Certainly not. Well, going back to WOTUS and the Sackett family, who this Clean Water Act decision impacted, the family was threatened with fines of $10,000 per day, had their property misclassified as a wetland, and were prevented from building their family home. It may not be a $2.5 million home like yours, but that sounds like a lot of red tape to me.
Excuse me.
Do you disagree?
I really take that as a personal
do you
assumption.
disagree?
My home.
Do you disagree that this was an overreach?
I disagree that
Ms.
you're
Katzen, my time
casting
has expired.
aspersions on
Mr. Chairman,
me
I yield.
or my...
Thank you.
The lady's time has expired.
Mr. Chairman, could we just ask all of our good members to respect the civility and decorum and the integrity of the witnesses who've come forward at their own expense to testify before us today. An insult is not a substitute for an argument. Yield back to you.
The chair would advise the members to adhere to the House standard of decorum and proceed in order. Ms. Crockett of Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
This committee runs my pressure up. And I do come prepared to committee, and then there's always somebody from this side that does something ridiculous that throws me all the way off. So, oh, Jesus. Okay, so this is where we're going to start, Ms. Kaskin. First of all, let me apologize because that was uncalled for. So let me do what she would never do, which is to be an adult in this room or in this chamber. So let me start there. I'm also going to start with some nonsense that she was trying to spew. And unlike Ms. Boebert, I am legally trained and I've passed a few bar exams. And I also legislated before I got here. So I do want to start with correcting the record a little bit. And if you want to add to that, please do.
So I love Josiah. Number one, the quote there from Raskin, "An insult is not a substitute for an argument." So apt and so applicable to the way that individuals like Lauren Boebert conduct themselves. Because what is all of this? This posturing, and we see it a lot with Marjorie Greene in hearings, these grandstands, and it's all just to get that clip, to get that moment for your audience to get hyped about, and often at the expense of people just coming forward trying to provide information about different subjects. This was a professor, let me get you the name here, Professor Sally Katzen, who is from New York University School of Law, and Boebert's making some comment about the price of her house that may or may have not been even accurate, but regardless, it's not at all in the interest of a point of substance, because sometimes you can get enraged in a hearing because you care about what you're talking about, and maybe someone's being dishonest. We see that with CEOs getting grilled by someone like Katie Porter. That's great. It's not even for that. It's just anyone who is opposed to kind of the Lauren Boebert ideology then has to become a punching bag for the entertainment of the MAGA base. And I loved that number one, Raskin pointed out an insult is not a substitute for an argument. Try to actually provide an argument of substance. That would be great. And then that Jasmine Crockett points out the childish nature of Lauren Boebert's whole shtick.
Yeah, so you and I were talking about this offline, but I just want to say right out the gate, the freshman class of Democrats in the House of Representatives, that people talk about the Democratic Party as having a weak bench, and in some contexts that's true when you consider the gulf between the elder statesmen like President Biden, and then, okay, well, who are the next heirs apparent? There is a question about a potential void there. Whereas in the Republican side, you can see like the next generation of prominent high-profile leaders like Ron DeSantis. The freshman Democrats who have entered the House of Representatives just emphasizes that in Congress, our bench is 10 times the strength of the Republican bench in Congress, particularly in the House. I mean, you have Jasmine Crockett, you have Jared Moskowitz, you have Dan Goldman. I mean, these are heavy hitters all the way around, so it was great to see them. Jamie Raskin, not exactly part of the freshman class, but he is, in terms of congressional leadership, he's amazing. He's a constitutional scholar. He's an attorney. And by the way, when you talk about how an insult is no substitute for an argument, he's a wordsmith. He knows these clever turns of phrase. He's so rhetorically effective. A lot of people want him to eventually consider a presidential run. And again, not the debate is, the single most important metric in a chief executive or most important quality. But it just goes to show that when you give, the Democrats in Congress an opportunity to flex their rhetorical and intellectual muscle, their debate muscle, they radically outclass anybody in the Republican roster. And so, Lauren Boebert is part of the Freedom Caucus, and I think as a general rule, you can expect that the Freedom Caucus, perhaps with the exception of somebody like Matt Gaetz, not exactly a group of respected and competent debaters. So they can only traffic in insults, right? When they have to compete on record, when they have to compete on policy, when they have to compete on value, they fall up measurably short. And so you have a combo, two-hitter there with Jamie Raskin coming in, and then Jasmine Crockett as well. It's just a great clip, great showing, and I think very emblematic of the exchanges that we see between Republicans and Democrats during these hearings.
Totally, and I will say, because one of the things I've put an emphasis on sometimes on my show is trying to assist in keeping you sane, and me, and by you I mean the audience and you, Josiah, but myself as well, doing a job like this, in having to deal with really enraging subjects sometimes can make you feel hopeless. But here's a bit of hope for you. Number one, I do think the MAGA part of the GOP is going to take the GOP down with it electorally for quite a while. And we're seeing this new generation of Democrats who not only are better at the messaging, they're also better on policy, much more progressive than the generation before them. And so I just encourage you, as we enter into what is going to be a nuts, sort of couple of years leading into a year and a half of the 2024 election, we do have hope for what is coming. If we can see Trump defeated again, a lot of this MAGA contingent of the party is going to be around for a while, but we're going to have a better Democratic side that I think on policy, yes, and on messaging will be able to trounce the GOP over and over in elections, which will be great to see. And it'll be not just for the sake of seeing someone defeated, but it'll be a rejection of, by the United States in awesome fashion, a really dangerous ideology, which I think is really hopeful. And even Hakeem Jeffries is someone who is so much better at messaging than Nancy Pelosi. And so once he's already the leader of the party, but if he were to be the Speaker of the House, he can play the messaging game a lot better. Policy matters a ton, but you can't implement policy effectively if you don't play the politics effectively. And so I'm really excited about what is to come, even though it's also a really scary future with the fascistic nature of part of the Republican Party. Thank you so much for watching. For the outro on this video, I want to plug Josiah's channel. Hit them with it, Josiah.
Hey, everybody. I appreciate you watching. You can find me at youtube.com/@ponderingpolitics. One word, Pondering Politics. If you like progressive commentary that focuses on coalition building with other elements of the left and calling the Republican Party out for what it's become, I hope you'll view my channel. Give me a like and subscribe and some feedback. Again, youtube.com/@ponderingpolitics. Thanks again.